Welcome to F&B Money Moves, a podcast where we help you make better financial decisions. I'm Maya Fisher-French.
And I'm Estosh.
And together we're going to solve the world's problems.
We're starting with their finances at least.
So the financial problem we're going to solve today is helping somebody to financially plan for their side hustle. Esther, this is a big phenomenon I've been seeing since COVID. Huge increase in the number of people who've got a side gig, side hustle, to make a little bit of extra money. Maybe a little bit because online came in, small businesses were able to find clients easier. They didn't have to take mall space and shopping centers and all of that. But why do you think we're seeing this huge uptick?
So I think there's a couple of factors. Exactly what you mentioned is COVID arrived, people were looking for a little bit of extra income. But I think something that's also important that gave rise to this is the cost of living. I mean, if you look at the cost of the living at the moment, what a basket of groceries were costing you in 2020 as opposed to now, it's quite a significant amount more. So they needed to start looking at how they can supplement a household income to make ends meet. And I think that's where the rise of the side hustle came in.
And of course, I think that times really nicely with this massive surge in technology and the ability of people and the comfort people now have to shop online, for example. Those numbers have been phenomenal, the amount of people who started to shop online in COVID, and that has kind of been maintained. So an interesting space for people wanting to start a side hustle.
And I think also the technology and being able to shop online is also better. So things like a virtual card that's available, far easier now with a CVV number that changes every hour or something. So it's a lot safer for people to shop online, but still, just please be aware of dubious shopping online.
Okay, and I'm so glad actually that you mentioned that virtual card because I have my virtual card and it actually says online shopping. So that's what I've named it. And I feel so much more comfortable using it because of course now that merchant can't go and use it an hour later or 2 hours later because literally the CVV number is changing. But you're so right. There's been such an increase in, and maybe we're going off topic here, there's been such an increase in fake online sites.
Absolutely.
And that has been a big complaint actually by the Consumer Goods Services Ombudsman, I think.
No, and I think it's important there with anything is just make sure if you are going to do online shopping or you're going to do anything, just investigate it properly. Make sure that the site is trusted. Do a Facebook search. I know that's for the older people. Twitter search, all of those to see if the site is actually proper before you start spending money on it.
Yeah, I know. I have to keep explaining this to my mother when she sees this. But Mom, I saw a lovely dress for only 50 Rand. And I'm like, Mom, that's not realistic. But let's get back to the topic at hand. Back to the topic at hand.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm also picking up though, so people have had a side hustle for a few years and then they get the shock of their lives when they discover they were supposed to be paying tax on it. People forget that any income that you earn, no matter how you earn it, you're supposed to pay tax on it.
Well, exactly, because it's income. So, and I think one of the big ways in starting any sort of side hustle, a good way of starting it is to keep it separate. So very quickly a side hustle can morph into something quite a bit bigger than just, an extra 500 Rand a month or something. So one of the good things to do is when you're starting this whole process of a side hustle is to open a separate bank account, making sure that the money that you're getting from that is separate to what you're using for the household and all of that. And it's also easier, to your point, to track what you're earning so you can declare it for tax because you're going to get a tax bill on that.
Yeah. And then, of course, F&B actually has that first business zero account, I think it's called. Yeah. And that's for small business or sole proprietors. And it's got no fees. It has fees if you transact, but it's got no monthly fees. And so I think one of the complaints I get from people when I say to them, have a separate bank account, they're saying, yes, but that's more fees. But actually, you can find pretty low-cost bank accounts to use.
Yeah, you can, absolutely. And I mean, the fees thing and the fees debate is a big thing, both in personal capacity as well as banking. And again, if you bank as digitally as possible, you're going to reduce those fees. But agreed, when you're starting a side hustle and doing, even as a sole prop, get that separate bank account, keep things separate so that it doesn't start getting that, in Latin, I think the principle is called mixture in your personal capacity.
And also from a tax perspective, I always say to people, you know what? When you get some money in from your side hustle, so maybe you've got like 3,000 Rand gets paid to you, keep 25% of that separate for tax. So just keep thinking that some of that is not yours. It belongs to SARS, because a lot of people come at the end of the year, they put all their income in and then suddenly there's a tax bill. They can't pay it and they land up actually borrowing money or putting on their, taking money out their credit cards or whatever to actually meet the tax payment, because of course SARS always comes for their money. So people are really scared about they may not pay their bank, but they will pay SARS.
But I mean, if you think about it, starting a side hustle, you should have the same principles as managing your own financial affairs. So you should have a budget for the business. You should have emergency savings. And then also you need to manage your debt. So exactly what you're talking about. If you have any expenses, be it a tax bill, be it suppliers that you need to pay, make sure that you've got that money stashed away that you can use it.
And also what's nice is I always, so I have to tell you, of course, I run a small business. You keep a little side, I always keep a side account where I put all that money. So we make sure that the tax amount is put to one side. If supplier money, all those things so I actually use a lot of multiple savings accounts, which are then linked to my main business account. So there are ways, and it is about managing your cash flow. So, I mean, really, really important aspects there around taxation, making sure that you've put the money aside.
And managing cash flow is important in a small business. So what people tend to do is they'd get the money in and they spend it on other things as opposed to maybe buying more stock or something. So that managing your cash flow and making sure that you've got sustainability in business is how it's going to grow in the long run.
And another good reason actually to open up a separate bank, if you're going to open up a separate bank account, and to open it up as a business account, like the Business Zero for sole proprietors, is that you start building up a track record for that business separate from yourself. So that when one day you need to maybe borrow money for the business, you've actually got a track record that isn't mixed in with your personal finances. So another really good reason to keep that separate.
Building a credit record light for the business, if we can put it that way.
Exactly. And it takes about a year, and I know this, it takes about a year for your business to be running and operating before you kind of get that, you start to build that credit. So really, really important. And another very important part of it is, what do you want to do with the money from your side hustle?
100%. So, obviously we want a side hustle to grow as quickly as possible. Well, not grow as quickly as possible. We don't want to grow big. But you do want to grow that business and make sure that it's sustainable in the long run. But your question is, what are you doing in the interim? So, sure, you need to cover your costs, you need to cover your input costs and all of that. But use that money properly. Investing. If you've got an extra couple of $1,000 or extra couple of $100 a month, why don't you think about doing a proper investment, things like unit trusts, so that you can get that long-term growth in the business?
And I think that, I think people have different side hustles for different reasons. Some people see it as a business that they may be growing for the future, to leave their children. They're actually seeing this as something that maybe they'll actually leave their daytime job and start working for themselves full time. So that may be one thought process. But for other people, it's literally, I need an extra 5,000 Rand a month. I can do this. I can go and deliver groceries for neighbors or do massages or whatever it is. So sometimes that is just a little bit of extra cash flow. And it's so important for me, I think, that you don't just add that to your day-to-day living and just simply increase your day-to-day living expenses, but rather, like you said, say, what is this money for? It may even be to save for my children's school fees. This money, this 5,000 Rand I'm making every month from my side hustle, is going to actually be the money that I'm going to save for my children's education, or to supplement something, or even to target debt. Say, I've got some debt that I want to pay off. But when you give purpose, then you get real action.
No, agreed. And it's, again, coming down to that thing of being intentional about your money, being intentional about your finances. What is that money going to be used for? Are you going to put it in towards paying debt, exactly what you said? And then you need to make sure that you've got that scheduled transfer in place, that it gets paid, that it not just goes into your bank account, suddenly you buy a pair of shoes, so on and so forth.
Absolutely. Unless you want the side hustle to buy a pair of shoes.
Unless you want the side
hustle. But then it's targeted. I don't mind what you do with the money, but have purpose.
100%.
Maybe just one last thought. I was talking about the sort of person who's, I actually know a woman who started a beauty product business on the side for her daughter. She wants to one day leave this business to her daughter, and her daughter's already involved in it and helping mix up the creams. And it's something that she wants to use as her way of creating intergenerational wealth. I mean, is that...
It's very possible. But I mean, it's a great way of creating proper generational wealth. Now, there's a couple of things that comes into play there. The first thing is making sure that if you see that this company has proper legs, so it's going to become into a generational wealth company. These things like potentially registering as a PTY limited, and then you've got sort of trust structures if it's going to be proper generational wealth. But, even before you get into that major structuring and get advice around that, so that you know that it's set up properly for generational wealth, it's something that's just as simple as doing a will. A will is probably the most important document a person's ever going to sign in their life. And I always say a will is adulting. It's something you're just going to have to do. And I mean, how important a will is. And, it's for a couple of reasons. The first reason is just literally who's going to be guardians of the kids. And then to our point now is who's going to get the assets, who's going to get the business, where's the different heirlooms going to go to in the family.
Absolutely. So you can specify this was your intention was to leave your daughter the business and make sure that is in the will.
Yeah.
And just on the one last note that made me think about something is often you may employ family members in your side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an interesting one. And I always feel that you need to treat your family members as if they were real employees.
Spot on.
Don't think that, oh, well, you're all just in the mix and you get food from me, so, you'll do it at half price. Because I think you also underestimate then the true input costs of your business. You should really say, right, you're a family member, I will pay you this amount. You will have, because then you give them some sort of autonomy and responsibility within the business.
I 100% agree with that. When it comes to family, even friends as well, make sure it's in writing. Just make sure that everything's in writing, that the expectations on both sides is properly documented, so that if something does go sour, it doesn't sour the family relationship as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Esther. Hopefully we've given our listeners a little bit of insight into their side hustles, things to think about. Don't forget, you will pay tax on it. There are obviously input costs that you could offset, so get a good accountant, that would help. Make sure you have a separate bank account, that you're tracking this separately, and have purpose.
Yeah.
And have a will.
And have a will, very important.
You've been listening to FNB Money Moves in partnership with Maya on Money, where we help you to make better financial decisions. So make sure you tune in to our next podcast.